The Leafs are in Nashville tonight, and we're inside the bubble here, so clearly a biased take, but I can't imagine there's another team in the league with more pressure on them
than the Toronto
Maple Leafs. And I keep hearing, it's a figure of speech, so I understand it, but they're in a dogfight. They're in more than just a dogfight. Like a dogfight would suggest there's
only one other dog.
Right. Or, they're only 2 or 3 points in,
right.
Or they're 1 point back with 4 games in hand. No, they're 4 points out, and they're 5 back of the wild card teams. Like they are, I don't know if people are truly understanding, Leaf fans are truly understanding the bind that they find themselves in here. It's not that you can't do it. It's not insurmountable. Of course you can do it. They're more than talented enough and deep enough to go on a serious run where in 2 weeks they might be 2 or 3 points in. As wild and crazy as this season's been, I'd almost expect that to be the case.
And that's all you can expect. Like, it's go time. There's no time to waste here and blow 3 or 4 games right off the top here. But there's no sense of going all Maple Leaf fans and being like, oh, who's to blame? Like, here's the poll. Who's to blame? It's like, it's January.
Yeah.
It's January, and the old who's to blame is happening.
Well,
it's
I think what the optimists are saying right now, if you're an optimistic Leaf fan, you're looking at the fact that under Sheldon Keefe,
I know.
They are playing whatever it is, 110-point hockey.
You look at the records,
and if they continue now,
the Edmonton Oilers, and
it's going to be 100-point hockey. I know. I'm just trying to be the optimist, and that if they continue under Sheldon Keefe in the way that they have with the sample size that we've seen, they will make the playoffs. If you start looking at it, though, in the way that you're looking at it, Brian, 4 points back, they got to leapfrog this and leapfrog that. There's a million 3-point games out there. It's hard to make up ground. Yeah, and they don't have Morgan Riley until March. And the goaltending's been a little bit suspect lately.
Yeah, I mean, to put it lightly. And that's the most obvious position to look at. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. And they were talking about this on the lunch earlier today. Freddie Anderson can completely turn around the whole season if he runs off a 33-game run. He's not going to start every game. But if he plays like a top 5 goalie the rest of the way, they're in. They're going to be in. Because they're going to still score 1 million goals. And if Freddie plays like a top 5 guy, they're in. If he plays like a bottom 5 or bottom 10 guy, they're going to miss.
Yeah. And what happens when he is not in the net is going to be a big factor, too. Are they going to go out and get a guy that can give him a break and say, go and play a couple games here or there? Because if they try to ride him throughout the season, it's going to be game over. He'll be done.
But this is where then you go to the defense,
guys? That's what happened to him before the break.
Yeah.
Because Hutchinson can play. I mean, Hutchinson's picked up some wins, but when the defense is in front of him and don't have the confidence that they have with Freddie, I don't know if they even have the confidence now, it seems like it's easy to blame the goalie when the goalie's getting 45 shots a game.
Well, that's another thing. This team needs to understand. The coach talked about maturity before the break, how they were immature in Florida, they were immature against the Blackhawks. Are they going to be mature enough to understand that they don't need 6 to win? It used to be a race to 3. You get to 3, you're probably going to win a hockey game in the National Hockey League.
What do you mean
now it might be 4, but you don't need 6 or 7 every night. So go ahead and get your 3 or 4, but after that, figure out how to play without the puck. The joke is over. If you're going to go out there and play pond hockey, you don't deserve to make the playoffs, and once you do, you're just going to get crushed anyway.
What do you mean by immaturity, though? Oh, you mean immaturity of like going out the night before and not being ready, or you mean about actually having playing the scheme that the coach wants them to play?
Their coach called them immature. He said they looked immature in Florida, and they looked immature against Chicago. So when the coach says that, there's a reason for it. So be mature enough to know that you have the talent to get 3 or 4, which should be good enough to win in the NHL, and you don't have to play like you need 6 or 7. Because that's what they're playing like.
So he's talking about the on ice. He's not talking about them not being ready to play the game.
Well, I think that's exactly what he was talking about.
Oh, you do?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, it all goes hand in hand.
But with the bye week coming up and an extra day in Florida, I don't think it was a coincidence that he used the term immature. In other words, they weren't ready to play. And, tonight's a challenge. You've been on a beach for a week. I'm sure you've been up, you've been doing your thing, and you should. You're on a bye week. Go do whatever you got to do. Recharge.
And the opposition is dying for points, too.
That's the thing. Like, Nashville is in the exact same position out west. They're a team that goes to the playoffs every single year. That's the expectation. They're built to do it. They fired a coach. They have more veterans. Like, in a matchup just head-to-head tonight, Nashville is the more mature team based on experience, based on age. The Leafs have to show up tonight. Like, you start working tonight. You started working yesterday. You practiced yesterday.
Yeah, and the
So let's
first period could determine the game. Which team wakes up and says, okay, we're here to play? Like, you could be down 2 or 3-0. It could be game over.
Right.
They went into the break on such a bad run with that loss to the Blackhawks. So if they start out of the break with another bad loss,
Perfect
can
timing
you
for the
imagine?
break, though. Perfect timing because it
as
does.
opposed to Florida, who was on a heater, and then they had to
And then they
stop
had
for
to break,
10 days.
Yeah, like this does feel like they're resetting their season. Like, it's totally artificial. It doesn't mean anything. But I think mentally you can have that feel. I'm sure Sheldon Keefe, that's the message he would be sending. You know, he is not an old school, get in your face, I'm going to remind you about all the wrong you've done.
You
Clean
might want to
slate.
mix in a little bit of that coming down the stretch. Just send a message. You want to do certain things out there, you're not going back out there. You want to play good, I'm going to play the heck out of you. But if you want to play like an idiot, I'm not playing you.
Yeah, I mean, I totally
Find
agree with
a
that.
balance.
But I'm saying, you know, in terms of trying to get them prepared for a 33-game run, it's in your best interest to forget about what happened prior to it.
What's the schedule like here down the stretch? I mean, do they have a lot of tough games? They got a lot of road games?
They're pretty even. I think it's like 16 at home, 17 on the road. Only one really big trip out in California in March, but those 3 teams
Right.
are done. And by the end of March, they'll officially be done. They would have traded off pieces.
And what about versus like Boston versus
They
Tampa
got 1 against
versus
Boston,
Florida?
3 versus Tampa, 3 versus Florida, 2 more against Pittsburgh.
All right,
Like,
so
they
there's
got tough
lots
games.
of opportunity, but there's
yeah.
lots of opportunity here.
Yep. Oh yeah. And then you also got games against Detroit and Ottawa, and there's a lot of games for them to make this up, and it's all good. You know, it doesn't have to be what you said. Retrospective analysis. Yeah. Believe me, we'll have a lot of time for it if they miss.
Well, with the deadline coming too, are they buyers or are they sellers?
But they'll determine that. You know, like
How many games do you think it's going to take for them to determine that?
I think all 14. There are 14 games between now and the trade deadline. Unless it's a long-term deal, which is what we keep hearing. Like, if you're going to trade a guy and bring in someone who's got 3 years left on his deal, it doesn't really matter when you make that deal. That's not knee-jerk. That's
It'll come
not
right down to the last week to see where they're at.
Yeah. And guess what? If they plummet between now and then, they better sell. Like, you better not have too much pride and think, oh, we can run off, 19 of our final 20 games and get in. No, you can't. Like, if it's a lost season, you might have to
You're
determine.
trying to miss and get a LeCavalier or a Cale Makar or something like that. It's miss on a year where you get something good and you move on.
Let's hope. I mean, let's hope we're not having that
Yeah, no
conversation,
kidding.
clearly. Like, I'm not prepared to have it. I don't think anybody is. 33 games, more than a third of the season is still remaining on the calendar here. So there's a lot of time for them to get going, but it's been a roller coaster year. Like, you never know. You always know there's going to be an up around the corner at some point and then probably another down. And we just went through a down, so let's hope they start
Back up.
chugging north.